don't know where the best place to film in here would be. I wanted to film in front of my plants instead of in my craft room today. I thought that would be kind of an adventure. We're on an adventure right now. I tried that TikTok hair thing that keeps showing up on my For You page, and I feel like an elf. It's kind of cute. My hair is much longer than the people who did it, and their little braids were like up to here and it looked really cute, but mine's down here and it just looks, I don't know, absolutely insane. I am here with the last part of the Mandalorian video. We're making some stuff today, some things, making the things. We have the blaster, yes, wow. And then the rifle, which I'm very kind of ish proud of. I mean, it turned out pretty okay, you know. I like it. Oh, never mind, there's like a hole in it and some of the paint got scratched off, but that's okay. We're just gonna ignore it. I didn't film too much of the process because I was referencing SKS Props video for the blaster and then Kamui Cosplay's video for the rifle, and I used her pattern for this as well, which is the only reason why it came out like it did. Let's go ahead and hop into the tutorial video, how I made it. Bang. So I don't have a printer, makes this a little more difficult. I ended up just drawing out my own pattern using SKS Props pattern as a reference. So I cut out the pattern for the front and the back of the blaster, and then I marked out the 1/2" PVC pipe for the barrel, put the pattern onto some 10mm foam, traced it, cut it out, and then also cut out my PVC pipe at the line that I previously made, and then I sanded it a little bit so that the primer will stick to it. I then created a channel on the inside of this foam piece. So this is gonna be like the sandwich side. I did that by angling my I did that by angling my blade, and then I scored the foam to create like a V shape, and then I peeled out the middle of the channel, so satisfying. And then I placed the wire inside for a little bit of extra support. After gluing that down, I glued one side of the blaster, and then I placed the other half on top. For the details around the barrel, I cut out some 6mm foam rectangles and I wrapped them around the barrel. I sanded the back half of the 6mm foam on the barrel to taper it a little bit, and that's just to match the reference photos, and then I blasted it with some heat to melt the fuzzies. For the grip, I cut the pattern out of 6mm foam, glued it to the handle, and then sanded the edges down. Next, I glued the barrel onto the blaster, and it's a little bit top heavy, but I mean, that's fine. It only wavers a little bit. You're telling me guns don't normally wiggle at the tips? So now it's time to add all the details, meaning I gotta cut this pattern apart, slap the pieces onto some foam, and glue them on layer by layer. This is why I like to have a plan in place before I start just like plopping all of the pieces on top of the foam. I like to imagine everything in layers, how it's gonna be built up, and how the different layers are gonna make it come to life and match the reference as much as possible. So first I'm taking this piece made of 6mm foam and scoring some lines into it. Some heat opens up the cuts, and then I glue it to the blaster. The next piece gets cut out of 2mm foam. It's hanging over the edge a little bit, but I do sand everything down later so that everything matches up perfectly. Before assembling the pieces, I like to cut them out and place them on the blaster and make sure each piece will fit. Measure twice, cut once. I wish I could explain exactly what I'm doing, but I don't even know what half of these pieces are called, so montage, I guess. Yes, the hammer on the back here is literally a pencil. It just works.
All of this just works.
I used a hole punch to get these teeny tiny pieces of 2mm foam rivets, and then I glued those on using some tweezers so that they don't, fly around everywhere and get stuck to my fingers. I had some bigger rivets to the blaster with googly eyes, which is my absolute favorite way to add rivets. Yes, they make noise. The trigger is just a piece of 10mm foam cut into a half moon shape and then sanded real nice and smooth. I cut out this little Nike logo and glued that to the bottom of the blaster and covered that with a piece of 2mm foam. The tip thing sight, is that what it's called, is 2mm foam that I just plopped on top of the barrel. More googly eyes were added, and apparently I didn't film much of the other side, but I just put the pattern pieces onto some 2mm foam, cut them out, and glued them onto the blaster. I just did that process over and over. And that's basically it for the build part. I did a few coats of Plasti Dip and then it was time to paint, but first I made the holster real quick. I put the blaster onto my leather fabric, traced it, cut it out, pinned it together, sewed it, and added the part that actually hangs onto the belt. I pinned that to check the fit, sewed it down, and that is it for the holster. I watched SKS Props video on how to do the wood grain and decided to try it out. So I painted the grip a slight creamy white color, dry brushed brown with this fan brush to create the streaks, aka the wood grain. I added a few more streaks with a skinny brush and then I did a brown wash over it. I didn't get footage of that, but I did the same technique with the rifle later on in this video, so you'll see that later. For the rest of the painting, I just dry brushed some silver paint onto the parts that would be worn out realistically on the blaster, and this is how it turned out. My favorite thing, I'm gonna get very close. My favorite thing about this blaster is, if you see, you might not be able to see it right here, there is a cat hair forever embedded inside of the glossiness. But this was my first time ever trying like wood, like a wood look, and it's okay, I guess. I don't think I filmed this. I painted this like a gold-ish and then I weathered that. So yeah, that was how I built this, and this was actually my first gun I've ever made, and it's not too bad. For the rifle, I was able to print out the pattern by Kamui Cosplay, so I popped that onto some 10mm foam, traced it out, cut a 1-inch PVC pipe to size, and then heated it up to create the bends in the rifle. I then started stacking foam until it completely covered the PVC pipe, so that you have no idea what's on the inside. I used 2 10mm pieces, 2 6mm pieces, and 2 4mm pieces. I went ahead and glued the PVC pipe in, and then I glued the 4mm foam piece on top to close it up. So there's things that I do which shouldn't ever be done. Here I'm cutting towards myself, but to be completely fair, to make this a little bit easier so I don't have to spend at least 12 hours sanding, the only thing I could do was to carefully trim down the edges, and cutting towards myself is the easiest way, so don't bully me. I've been doing this for a really long time and I am careful. I don't mind when my fingers get harmed, but I don't want your fingers to get harmed. Next, I cut the scope to size, I believe it's 1/2 inch, and I also cut down a wooden dowel, which will be used for the bottom rod thing. Once I trimmed down the edges, I used my rotary tool and I smoothed it all out to a round shape. After at least an hour of sanding, I melted down the little foam fuzzies with my heat gun. After that's done, I moved on to the middle section of the rifle. Same as the blaster, I visualized all the different layers in my head, and so I started with this long rectangle built up around the PVC pipe with 4 10mm foam pieces and 2 4mm top pieces. So what I like to do is pre-mark out where all the patterns are going to sit. So I take my pattern, I poke my pen through the paper onto the foam, and then I take a ruler and mark the lines. This is just so everything sits nicely and nothing is crooked, which can lead to literally everything being a tad off, and then it's all wonky, and then I have to do it again, and that makes me sad. I also use tape when I'm sanding a straight line because it does keep the line pretty straight compared to what I'd be able to do just by hand, which always comes out uneven for me at least, so it helps a little bit. It works a lot better with insulation foam, but it does work pretty okay with EVA foam. I wrapped a piece of 6mm foam around the top of the rifle, and here I'm just trimming the bottom since I tend to make pieces a little bit longer than they need to be because it's always easier to remove instead of add. And same with sewing. I think that's how I learned that. I make everything way too big and then I tailor it to myself. I was feeling a little basic and wanted to show you guys my coffee. Do you like my cup? It was at one point a hot sauce container. Very cute. Oh my god, my entertainment center, not system. Why do I keep calling it an entertainment system?
Did you want to stare at this guy?
My entertainment center is here. God, I get to go put my entertainment center together. But I gotta finish this first. I don't remember where I was.
Look at these 3D mushrooms.
Oh, I love the 3D mushrooms. Are you kidding me?
You can
3D
craft,
mushrooms.
You can craft leather, or you can craft...
Get yourself a husband that downloads 3D mushrooms in Minecraft for you.
What? You fuckers. You fuckers. You motherfucker, I will rain hellfire upon you.
Alright, so back to pinning things. I'm just continuing to take the pieces off the pattern and I put them onto the foam. I'll link the reference photos that I was looking at to get the right thicknesses of everything. At this point, there's really not that much to film because it's just the same thing over and over. I cut the pattern, I placed it onto the rifle, and I glue it. I tape the foam pieces so dumb hands don't over sand. Glue more tiny pieces down. Sand, heat up fuzzies to melt them away. I love to see the whole thing come together as more and more details get attached, and it was really coming to life at this point. Gluing down the really tiny pieces was definitely my favorite part.
Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob! SpongeBob, careful! Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob!
I am using googly eyes as the rivets. So here I'm just moving down the barrel and adding some 6mm foam details. For more additional detailing, I score the foam with my blade and I heat it up to open the cuts. So in my script, I wrote the cuts as TEH, and that just like brought me back to middle school. XD. Same thing that Kamui did for the middle part. I glued two curved 12mm foam pieces onto the barrel and I wrapped them in a 6mm piece of foam around it to give it a shape, whatever that shape may be. And then for the hexagonal barrel part, I glued tiny strips of 4mm foam to the PVC pipe and wrapped a layer of 2mm foam around it. For the muzzle, I sandwiched cardboard between 6mm foam, and I used these melty plastic beads as support and to shove it into the barrel part, and that keeps it from flopping around. And wowee, skipping ahead quite a bit because at this point I was like, I can't wait to finish building this. Oh, forgot to film, but here I'm just doing a final quick seal filling and ensuring all the gaps are filled. Okay, so I just, where's the mic on this camera? I'm using a new camera and I don't want to cover it up while I'm talking. Okay, anyway, so I just got done priming this with some gray Plasti Dip. Ooh, it stuck. I would have used black, but I am all out. So I used gray and that works just fine. So now I'm actually going to go over this with some black airbrush paint that will dry it matte. And then that will be a good base to start painting this. Oh my god, okay, that scared me. I thought that was a squished can of Plasti Dip and I was like, how did that happen? It's just the wrapper because it came off. I'm so dumb. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do a coat of black on this. After priming, I used some silver paint by Folk Art, a sponge, and I hit all of the edges with it to bring out the pieces and weather it a little bit. These pieces wrapping around the barrel get painted silver. This thing get painted, that's what I wrote. This thing gets painted a bronzish color and then I dirty it up a bit with some brown paint, which I'm still making my own brown paint because guess who is still way too lazy to go get brown paint? I have to make my own and it wastes so much paint and it's such a waste of my time too. I realized I didn't film any of my airbrushing with silver paint, so here's a reenactment of my airbrushing. 10 out of 10. The muzzle also got airbrushed with a layer of gold first, then red, then blue. I was having issues with my camera not focusing because I am still brand new to this camera and my airbrush was also just not having a good time, so. The idea definitely was taken from Kamui Cosplay for this effect. I love it, 10 out of 10, it's really cute. These pieces holding the scope got painted with Folk Art's gold paint. I practiced the wood grain effect again on the stock. I painted it a white cream color, and then I brushed brown paint going lengthwise, and that creates those little wood lines, kinda. I tried. And here's the brown wash that I forgot to film from the blaster. It's just watered down brown paint, so I waited until those wood grain lines were dry and then I went over it with the wash. It being watered down allows the lines to show through, and I basically kept doing this until I was happy with the color, and then I weathered it with some black paint. Next, I'm just weathering it with a little more dry brushing with some Folk Art's nickel paint, and that's it. That is apparently all that I filmed. You're not helping, Beanie. You're not helping. It's sitting on my pattern. That's not help. On the rifle, right here, there's also another embedded cat hair. I just bring a little piece of my cats with me every time I go to a con with this. Again, I pretty much built this almost the exact same way that Kamui did. Oh, it's spicy in here. Why did I choose the spiciest part of the day to do this? But that's pretty much how I built these two things right here. Again, I recommend SKS Props and Kamui Cosplay for one, the patterns, because patterning sucks. Always use a pattern if it's available, because it sucks. And then their videos are pretty good. They helped out quite a bit. So hopefully this was a little bit helpful if you plan on making these yourself. It was a lot less challenging than I thought it was going to be, and overall I'm pretty happy with how these turned out. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I have my Ren Fair costume for my next videos, so I'm going to be making that. So I'm really excited. So if you like making stuff, feel free to subscribe and hang out. I will see you guys sometime soon. Okay, bye.